I exposed a massive fraud at work and they tried to ruin me for it. I never thought clicking on a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. would destroy my career and almost my life. It sounds dramatic, I know, but that one click was the moment everything I'd built for 10 years started to collapse. My name's Kiara Morgan. I'm 32, and up until a year ago, I worked as a senior financial analyst at Pinnacle Capital, one of those glossy investment firms in downtown Chicago that people imagine when they hear the phrase corporate success. Think glass walls, expensive coffee, people who wear watches that cost more than a month's rent, and an office culture that worships productivity like it's religion. I used to believe in it too. I used to believe that if you worked hard, stayed honest, and didn't play dirty, you'd be fine. But that's not how it works. Not in the real world. When I joined Pinnacle 6 years ago, I was just grateful to have my foot in the door. I was good with numbers, not in the genius, Wall Street wizard kind of way, but in the obsessive, detail-oriented way that made me the one people came to when they needed a report fixed or a budget balanced. I like solving problems. Numbers made sense when people didn't. My boss, Ethan Hale, was one of those men who could walk into a room and immediately make everyone feel like they weren't doing enough. Perfectly tailored suits, the smile that never reached his eyes, the voice that flow could charm investors and intimidate interns in the same breath. He liked control of conversations, of outcomes, of people. At first, I admired him. Then I learned to fear him. Still, I did my job. I worked long nights, hit every deadline, skipped birthdays and vacations just to meet his impossible standards. He'd sometimes stop by my desk after hours, loosen his tie, lean on the cubicle wall, and say, "You're the backbone of this department, Kiara. People like you keep the ship running." I used to feel proud when he said that. I didn't realize backbone was just another word for expendable. It started on a Thursday night during the end of quarter crunch, that brutal time when everyone's running on caffeine and panic. Most of the team had gone home around 9 p.m., but I stayed. I liked the quiet of an empty office, the hum of the HVAC, the city lights reflecting off the windows. It felt almost peaceful. I was reviewing a data set from a client account, a mid-sized logistics company called Brightford Shipping. Their profits had jumped by nearly 28% compared to last quarter. Good news, right? Except the revenue increase didn't match the cost ratio. Their reported expenses were too clean, like someone had washed the dirt off the numbers. I frowned, double-checked the formulas, refreshed the pivot table, nothing changed. Then I opened the source sheet from the internal drive, and that's when I noticed it. A duplicate transaction log that shouldn't exist. The entries were labeled under a sub-account I'd never seen. Astra Holdings Client Expense Transfers. At first, I thought it was an internal error. Happens all the time. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked through. The account was encrypted weird, but not unheard of for high-level data. So I used my analyst credentials to peek deeper. What popped up wasn't an expense report. It was a trail. Transfers between Brightford and offshore entities in the Cayman Islands. Small ones at first $40,000 here, $75,000 there, but then bigger amounts. $1.3 million, $2.4 million. Over and over, routed through Astra Holdings. The problem? Astra Holdings didn't exist in our client list. My stomach dropped. I sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse racing. I knew what this looked like. It wasn't an error. It was fraud. Someone was siphoning money through dummy accounts. And that someone had to be inside the company. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I kept replaying possibilities. Maybe it was a test, or maybe I'd misread the data, but the next morning I went straight to the office, opened the same files, and checked the metadata. The last person who'd accessed the files was Ethan. I remember sitting back in my chair, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. I tried to breathe, to think logically. Maybe he had authorization. Maybe it was part of a confidential client project, but then why hide it? Why duplicate the records and label them as expenses? By noon, I'd convinced myself to forget about it, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. People who dig too deep don't last long in firms like Pinnacle. But every time I looked at those numbers, I saw gaps, little inconsistencies that whispered, something's wrong here. 2 weeks passed before I decided to quietly dig deeper. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lena, my closest friend at work. She was the type who still believed good people win if they follow the rules. I didn't want to shake that belief for her. So I started collecting data slowly, discreetly, downloading monthly statements, copying audit trails, comparing client logs. I'd stay late under the pretense of rebalancing accounts, but really I was following a trail I wasn't sure I wanted to find the end of. The deeper I looked, the more connections appeared. Brightford Shipping wasn't the only one. There were at least 6 other clients linked to Astra Holdings, all showing similar patterns. The transfers were precise, spaced, and deliberate. Someone had built a laundering system right inside our financial infrastructure, hidden in plain sight. One night, Ethan stopped by my cubicle again. "Still here?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "End of quarter," I said, forcing a smile. "Just balancing some transfers." He leaned over my desk, his cologne too strong, his voice dropping a little. "Don't work yourself to death, Kiara. Some things aren't worth losing sleep over." It sounded innocent enough, except he looked directly at the folder labeled Astra_Holdings_Q4. He smiled, nodded once, and walked away. I froze. My fingers hovered over the mouse, my throat dry. How did he know? Was that coincidence, or had he seen what I'd been doing? For the first time, I realized I might be in danger not physically, but professionally. In a place like Pinnacle, reputation was everything. If they wanted to make me disappear, they could. One HR complaint, one breach of confidentiality, and I'd be done. That weekend, I tried to disconnect. I met my boyfriend, Derek, for brunch. He was sweet, patient, a graphic designer who never quite understood the world I lived in. When I told him work was stressful, he just said, "Then quit. You're too smart to be miserable." I smiled, but didn't answer. People outside finance never get how golden the chains can be. You don't just quit when your entire career depends on a spotless record and references from powerful men. But his words stayed with me. Was I miserable or just scared? Monday morning, I came in early and printed out one of the reports just to have a physical copy. As the printer hummed, Lena walked in with her coffee and saw the stack. "Working on the Brightford stuff again?" she asked. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just double checking something." She tilted her head. "You've been double checking for weeks. You okay?" I forced a laugh. "Just being thorough." Lena shrugged but didn't press. Still, I noticed her eyes flick toward the documents as she walked away. That's when I decided I needed to stop using the office system altogether. I bought a cheap flash drive and started keeping everything there. I encrypted it, hid it in my desk drawer behind a loose panel. It felt paranoid, but something in my gut told me to be careful. A few days later, an internal email circulated. Subject: scheduled security audits all departments. Routine audits weren't unusual, but the timing made my skin crawl. That afternoon, Ethan called a quick, all-hands meeting. He stood at the front of the conference room, sleeves rolled up, smiling like a man who owned the air. "Just a reminder," he said smoothly. "Our clients trust us with sensitive information. Let's make sure everything we do reflects that trust." His eyes landed on me for half a second too long. I looked away. After that, things started to shift subtly. My system access was reduced for restructuring. It asked to re-verify my credentials. My emails started getting delayed, sometimes bouncing back. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then one night, I logged into the system and found my folder. Q4 transfers completely wiped. Every file gone. I sat there in shock, staring at the empty screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. I knew I hadn't deleted it, but someone had access. Someone wanted me blind. I felt sick. I reached into the drawer for my flash drive, still there. Thank God. It hit me then. Whoever was doing this knew I was onto them. And they were warning me. I couldn't talk to HR, they reported directly to Ethan. Going to upper management was suicide, so I started documenting everything at home. I'd copy what I could, email notes to a hidden account, even take photos of certain reports when the files disappeared. The paranoia grew with every passing day. I'd catch Ethan glancing my way during meetings, his smile thin. Lena started asking if I was okay. Even Derek noticed the anxiety. He said I was somewhere else all the time. He wasn't wrong. I was living two lives, one as the loyal analyst and another as the silent investigator no one asked for. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late again, past midnight. The office was now empty except for me and the cleaning crew. I was cross-referencing a new batch of reports when I noticed something chilling. The same Astra Holdings account had been renamed. It now appeared as Ridgeway Consulting. Same transactions, same timestamps, just a new name. Whoever was behind this wasn't just hiding money, they were evolving their cover-up in real time. That's when I realized, if I didn't act now, the trail would vanish forever. I opened a new encrypted folder and began saving screenshots, metadata, and a personal note summarizing every inconsistency I'd found. My hands shook the entire time. I was terrified, but also angry. Angry that they thought they could get away with it. Angry that people like Ethan sat in boardrooms, laughing while laundering millions, while people like me worked ourselves to exhaustion for scraps of praise. By 2 a.m., I'd compiled nearly 200 pages of data. And then I did the one thing that sealed my fate. I sent a message. Not to HR, not to Ethan, to the SEC whistleblower tip portal. I didn't include my name. I just uploaded the files, wrote a short note, and hit send. The moment I did, a strange calm washed over me. I'd done the right thing. That had to count for something, right? When I walked out of the office that night, the city was quiet. The streets were empty, the wind sharp and cold. I remember thinking it was over, that I'd finally found peace. But peace never free. Because what I didn't know then, as I watched the traffic lights flicker on Michigan Avenue, was that my message hadn't stayed anonymous for long. And the people I just exposed, they were already watching. The moment I hit send on that anonymous email to the SEC, I felt both powerful and terrified. It was 2:47 a.m. I remember staring at the glowing screen of my laptop, my fingers trembling, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. There's this strange feeling when you cross a line you can't uncross, like the silence itself is watching you. That's how it felt. Like I had just shouted into the dark and something out there had turned to look at me. For the next few days, nothing happened. No reply, no acknowledgement, no sudden knock on my door. Just the same corporate chaos as usual: emails, meetings, performance reviews, the usual dance of pretending everything's fine. I tried to convince myself maybe it would stay that way. Maybe the SEC would quietly investigate, and I'd never have to be involved. I'd done my part. I'd done the right thing. Except the right thing doesn't protect you from consequences. Because within a week, I started noticing things. Little things at first. My access to shared drives was temporarily restricted. My company card stopped working due to system updates. I'd open my laptop and my cursor would lag for half a second like someone else was connected. I told myself it was paranoia, but paranoia doesn't explain how. 3 days later, my personal email got locked. When I tried resetting it, the recovery number had been changed. That's when I realized they knew. Maybe not officially, maybe not provably, but somehow, some way, someone inside Pinnacle Capital had figured out what I'd done, or at least suspected, and they were already dismantling my life, one login at a time. I tried to act normal at work, smile, make small talk, but my nerves were shot. Every hallway conversation felt like a setup. Every phone call made me flinch. Then came Ethan's new mood. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't angry, he was nice, too nice. He started complimenting me more often, dropping by my desk with his fake warmth and perfect teeth. "You've been doing great work, Kiara," he'd say. "We really value your loyalty here." Loyalty. That word hit me like a threat wrapped in honey. One afternoon, he called me into his office. The blinds were half closed, the skyline stretching behind him like a backdrop from a crime movie. He gestured for me to sit. "There's been some weird system activity lately," he said, folding his hands. "Someone's been accessing high-level financial reports outside their department." I froze. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I forced a confused smile. "No." "Should I?" He studied me for a moment, then leaned back. "No, of course not. Just routine checks. You know how compliance gets." But his eyes didn't move. They stayed locked on me until I looked away. That night, when I left work, I couldn't shake the feeling he knew everything. At home, things weren't better. Derek, my boyfriend, had always been my safe place, the one person I could come home to after a brutal day and feel human again. But lately, he'd been distant, moody, checking his phone constantly. One night over dinner, he asked, "Are you in some kind of trouble at work?" I froze mid-bite. "What? No. Why?" He shrugged, not looking at me. "A guy from your office reached out to one of my clients, said there were, data issues." He didn't say much, but it sounded serious. My blood ran cold. "What guy?" "Ethan Hale, I think. Tall, expensive suit. He asked about you, said there were confidentiality concerns." I nearly dropped my fork. Ethan had gone behind my back, reached into my personal life. I tried to laugh it off, to tell Derek it was nothing, but his expression didn't change. "Kiara, if there's something going on, just tell me. I can handle it." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But how do you tell someone you love that your boss might be laundering millions and you're the one who exposed it? That every email, every phone call might be watched? So I lied. "It's fine, just internal stuff." He didn't believe me. The next morning, things escalated. My ID badge didn't work when I tried to enter the building. The scanner flashed red. "Probably a system glitch," the security guard said with a shrug. He typed my name into his computer. "Huh, you're marked as under audit." I forced a smile, pretending I wasn't panicking inside. "Must be a mistake." He let me through after a call to HR, but the humiliation stung. Everyone at the front desk saw. When I got to my desk, Lena was already there, leaning against my chair. "What the hell is going on with you?" she asked. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I got an alert this morning. They're reviewing our department's access logs. They said someone's been downloading restricted files. Are you involved in something, Kiara?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was scared. I hesitated, then said softly, "Would you believe me if I said I found something bad?" She frowned. "Bad how?" I swallowed hard. "Like, really bad. Illegal bad." She stared at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Ethan?" I didn't answer, but she read it in my silence. Her eyes darted around the office. "Jesus, Kiara, you can't do... You know what you're playing with. These people could end you." I tried to smile. "I'm being careful." "Careful?" she hissed. "They have IT access. They can erase you from the system." Her words hit like a warning bell. And right then, my computer screen flickered once, twice, then went black. That night, I got home late. I parked on the street near my building, the usual spot under the streetlight. The air was cold, and I was exhausted, mentally fried from pretending everything was normal. I took one step toward my car and heard the sound. I froze, looked down. All 4 of my tires were slashed. For a moment, I just stared. My heart thudded in my ears, and my breath came fast. I turned in a circle, scanning the empty street. No one. Just the hum of the city. Then I saw it tucked under my windshield wiper. A single folded note. My hands were shaking as I opened it. "Stop digging." No signature, no details, just 2 words. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that paper. But when I finally went upstairs, I locked every door and sat on the couch with the lights off. That was the first night I realized this wasn't just corporate politics anymore. It was a threat. The following days blurred together. I went to work, but I was different. Cautious, watchful. Every email I received, every Slack message, every random meeting felt like surveillance. Then, one afternoon, Lena pulled me aside again. "They're investigating someone," she whispered. "Compliance got a tip about unauthorized data transfers. HR's holding secret meetings with Ethan. They won't say who, but Kiara, I think it's you." My throat tightened. "How?" "They traced the system access logs. Whoever reported the fraud used your department's credentials." That's when it hit me they'd found my trail. My anonymous report hadn't been anonymous at all. By the next week, it got worse. Ethan called another team meeting. He was calm, almost smug. "We're conducting an internal integrity review," he said. "If any of you have concerns or know about policy violations, now's the time to come forward." He looked directly at me. I felt Lena's eyes flick toward me too. Everyone in that room felt the tension like a wire stretched too tight. When the meeting ended, Ethan stopped me at the door. "You look tired," he said quietly. "Maybe take some personal time." It wasn't advice, it was a warning. That night, Derek confronted me again. "I got a call," he said. "Someone claiming to be from a background verification agency. They asked about your ethics, Kiara. About whether you've ever mishandled client data." I sat down hard on the couch. "They're trying to frame me." He blinked. "Who?" "Ethan. The company. I reported something illegal and now they're—" "Wait," he cut me off, voice rising. "You what? You reported something? Kiara, are you out of your mind? You can't just—" I slammed my hands on the table. "It was fraud, Derek. They're laundering money." He went quiet, too quiet. "Do you have proof?" I hesitated. "Not anymore. They deleted everything from the servers." He shook his head, stood up. "You should have come to me before doing something like that." "I couldn't. It's confidential." "No, it's stupid," he snapped. "You're risking both our lives, Kiara." The word "our" broke something inside me. That night, he slept on the couch. By the weekend, I was unraveling. My job was crumbling, my relationship was hanging by a thread, and I could feel eyes on me everywhere I went. One afternoon, while walking to my car, I caught sight of a black sedan parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine off. The same car was there the next day and the next. I told myself it was coincidence. Until one night, when I came home late, the car wasn't parked. It was slowly rolling behind me. I pulled into a gas station and waited. It drove past, but I couldn't shake the feeling anymore. I was being watched. The breaking point came the following Monday. When I arrived at work, my login credentials were completely disabled. HR called me into a conference room. Ethan was there. So was the head of HR. "Kiara," she began softly. "We've received reports of irregular data activity traced to your account." I tried to speak, but Ethan cut in. "We're not making accusations. We just need to understand what happened." He said it like he was the victim. Like I'd betrayed him. My voice shook. "You're accusing me of the very thing you're doing." Ethan's expression didn't change. "I'd be careful, Kiara. Words like that can have consequences." The HR rep looked uncomfortable. She handed me a suspension notice, pending review. As I walked out, every eye in the office seemed to follow me. Lena stood frozen by the copier, guilt written all over her face. I didn't blame her. She had a mortgage. Kids. She couldn't risk this. But in that moment, I realized something. Ethan had underestimated me. He thought cutting me off would make me panic, maybe even confess. He didn't know I still had the flash drive at home, the one with everything. That night, I sat in my apartment, lights off, curtains drawn, laptop open. I opened the encrypted folder, checked the data all intact. My heart pounded as I wrote another message to the SEC, this time from a new account using a burner network. "They know it's me. They're destroying evidence. Please act fast." When I hit send, I didn't feel relief this time, just dread. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. They'd already started trying to destroy my life. The next step would be to destroy me. They wanted to make me the villain, so I let them think they'd won. By the time I realized what was happening, the walls weren't just closing in, they were suffocating me. And Pinnacle Capital wasn't playing fair. It started that Monday, early in the morning, with a cold email from HR. Subject line, "Immediate compliance review. Your attention required." I opened it, expecting a routine note. What I found instead was a meticulously drafted accusation. Unauthorized access to restricted client data, potential data theft, pending investigation. I stared at the words, frozen, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the mouse. It was all lies, all of it. But with a department-wide memo, official timestamps, and corporate letterhead, it looked credible. To anyone who didn't know me, it sounded terrifyingly real. Even before I could respond, IT blocked my work accounts. My email, my internal drives, my access to client data, everything vanished. I couldn't even log into the basic intranet portal without the system rejecting me. Panic started to settle in, cold and heavy, like lead in my chest. By the afternoon, my phone started ringing. Calls from reporters. One had a familiar voice, but I couldn't place it. They asked questions, probing, insinuating. Before I knew it, a story had hit the web. Senior analyst accused of embezzlement, alleged corporate sabotage at Pinnacle Capital. The headline was designed to sting, to destroy. I lost my job, my reputation, my sense of safety, all in less than 24 hours. Even Lena, my friend and closest ally at the firm, stepped back. I understood her fear. I really did. If corporate pressure could crush me, it could crush her too. But the sting of her silence was almost worse than the fake accusations. I had trusted her, and now she wouldn't even meet my eyes in the hallway. I spent the next few days in a haze, watching as everything I'd built over years unraveled. My bank accounts were frozen. The media painted me as a jealous ex-employee trying to sabotage the firm. Social media feeds were brutal. Messages from acquaintances, strangers, even distant relatives, some expressing doubt, others outright condemnation. And yet, amid all this chaos, I refused to break. I still had my encrypted backup. The flash drive I had hidden, the one I had painstakingly compiled over months, untouched and untouchable by their IT meddling, was now my lifeline. I pored over every report, every transaction, every anomaly, until I could trace the pattern of fraud from start to finish. Every transfer, every fake client, every offshore shell company, I had the proof. But having proof wasn't enough. I needed leverage. I needed someone outside the firm who could recognize the pattern, someone with authority to investigate without fear of Pinnacle's influence. That's when I found Agent Ross. He was an SEC investigator, mid-40s, sharp eyes, calm demeanor, the kind of person who spoke rarely but with precision. I reached him through an anonymous tip line, explaining only what I could safely reveal without exposing my identity further. I included snippets of the data trail, enough to catch his attention. He responded almost immediately. A meeting in a secure, unmarked location. He didn't ask for my name. He didn't want to know my life story. He just wanted to know about the fraud, the evidence, and whether the firm was actively obstructing investigation. We sat in silence for a few minutes before he finally said, "Miss Morgan, whoever you are, you've got a serious case here, but you're in danger. They'll come after you, and they're good at it. We need to make sure you don't disappear before this reaches the right hands." His words didn't comfort me. They confirmed everything I feared, but at the same time, they sparked something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. I knew Pinnacle's next move would be more aggressive. They had already frozen my accounts and ruined my reputation. Now they would try to force me to crack. To admit guilt, to panic, I couldn't let them see me crumble, so I started planning my countermove. First, I had to make sure my evidence couldn't be taken away. I set up multiple encrypted backups, some in the cloud, some physically hidden, each copy protected by layers of security that would make even Ethan pause. I also began documenting every single retaliation tactic they used against me. Emails, calls, system blocks, media leaks, everything. Then came the sting operation. I had noticed subtle traces of manipulation in the firm's internal network. Files moved, logs deleted, access times altered. If I could bait them into touching my encrypted data, I could capture it in real time, a digital footprint, proving deliberate obstruction. I started small, leaving tiny, harmless files in the shared drives. Files labeled Astra_Holdings_Test1 and Ridgeway_Consulting_Q. Two fake, meaningless data designed to lure their attention. And sure enough, within days, the logs showed unauthorized access. Someone had tried to delete them. I captured screenshots, timestamps, even IP traces. Every time they fell for the bait, I felt a small surge of triumph. They thought they were destroying me, but they were only giving me more proof. It wasn't just digital games. I had to be careful in real life too. I began keeping a detailed log of everyone I met, every suspicious call, every stranger near my apartment or parked car. The night my tires were slashed in Chapter 2 wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a broader campaign to intimidate me. Now I carried a small camera in my bag, recording any unusual activity near my home or the office. Lena started cautiously checking in, leaving short notes under my desk or discreet emails. She couldn't risk open contact, but her small gestures meant I wasn't completely alone. And then came the breakthrough. During one late evening at Pinnacle, I managed to observe Ethan and a few of the executive team members gathering in a boardroom. It was supposedly after-hours work, but I had a feeling this was more than mundane reports. The lights were dim, the blinds drawn, and I could hear snippets of their conversation from the hall. They were discussing asset transfers, offshore accounts, and how to cover their tracks for the upcoming audit. They mentioned my name not as a colleague, but as a threat. "She's digging too deep. Lock down the logs before she exposes us." I knew then that my assumption was correct. They were actively trying to frame me, and they were panicking. I had one chance to capture proof, and I wasn't going to waste it. Using a small, concealed recorder I'd hidden in my bag, I set it up outside the boardroom. I timed it carefully, making sure no one saw me slip in. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but adrenaline. I stayed in the shadows, heart hammering in my chest, listening as Ethan and his team laid out their next moves. "By Monday, we'll have the audit show clean sheets. Anyone questions? Good. Keep everything off internal logs, no one can see it." "And the whistleblower?" one of them asked. "Handled. If she doesn't back off, we make it look like she stole the files herself." I held my breath, my stomach nodding. They were talking about me, my work, my life, everything, and I was recording it all. For the first time since I sent that initial anonymous email, I felt a surge of power. I wasn't a victim. Not yet. That night, I went home, trembling but alive. I listened to the recording on my laptop, making sure it was clear. Every word was there. Every plan, every attempt at covering up their fraud. My chest heaved. I couldn't believe it. I had them. But I also knew the danger wasn't over. This was only the beginning. If they discovered the recording, they'd escalate everything. They might even try to harm me physically. Yet, for the first time in weeks, I slept with a sense of purpose. I had a plan, a lifeline, a way to fight back. And I knew, deep down, that the next time I stepped into Pinnacle Capital, I wouldn't be stepping into a trap, I'd be walking into a battlefield. I didn't plan revenge. I planned justice, but the difference blurred fast. The night I decided to leak the recording, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed Ethan's voice, his team's plans, the way they had tried to make me the villain in every possible way. And yet, it wasn't hatred that drove me. It was a simple, stubborn need to make the truth matter. I carefully uploaded the recording to a secure, anonymous server, sending copies to the SEC and a few trusted investigative journalists who had previously broken corporate fraud stories. I didn't attach my name. I didn't want fame. I wanted action. Within hours, the fallout began. The next morning, the headlines hit like a tidal wave. Pinnacle Capital executives indicted in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Whistleblower exposes corporate laundering at Chicago investment firm. Emails flooded my inbox anonymous, of course, from people thanking me, warning me, and some even threatening me. But the tide had turned, investigators swooped in, auditors froze accounts, and the board was thrown into chaos. The company, of course, didn't go quietly. Lawyers descended like vultures, painting me as a mentally unstable former employee. They claimed the data I had leaked was falsified, that my obsession with numbers and spreadsheets had driven me to fabricate evidence. But they didn't know one thing. I had proof. Every transaction, every altered log, every attempt to destroy my credibility, I had documented it all. Courtroom days were the longest I'd ever endured. I was questioned relentlessly. Lawyers tried to undermine my credibility, highlighting minor errors in my reports, casting doubt on my state of mind. They called me erratic, obsessive, unreliable. I felt the walls closing in the same walls Pinnacle had used to suffocate me for months. But I remembered why I was there. Every time I spoke, I didn't just answer questions, I told the story. I spoke of the spreadsheets that didn't add up, the offshore accounts, the repeated attempts to silence me. I described the threats, the surveillance, the night my tires were slashed, the lies fed to Derek, the isolation I endured. I let the court see the human cost of their greed. By the third day, murmurs filled the courtroom. People were leaning forward, listening. My voice cracked sometimes. I admitted fear. I admitted exhaustion, but I never admitted guilt. I'm not here to take revenge, I told the judge. I'm here to make sure that truth is seen, that fraud is stopped, that people who risk the livelihoods of thousands for their own gain are held accountable. And then Lena appeared. She walked into the courtroom quietly, carrying a file thick with evidence she had been too afraid to share before. She hesitated for a moment, then handed it to my lawyer. Everything she says is true, Lena whispered. I just couldn't risk it before, but I know what she's done, and it's real. The evidence Lena provided was the nail in the coffin, internal communications, deleted audit logs, traces of attempts to frame me. The moment our lawyer submitted it, the courtroom shifted. I could feel the momentum swing in our favor. Meanwhile, Ethan didn't wait for the court's faster decision. He tried to flee the country. I saw the news alerts, first a private jet, a hastily arranged escape to Europe, passports being checked, but law enforcement was faster. Border agent intercepted him at O'Hare Airport. He was escorted off the plane in handcuffs, a look of shock frozen on his face. I watched it unfold from my apartment, numb. Relief, vindication, exhaustion all tangled together. The public narrative had shifted. Social media, once filled with accusations against me, now praised the anonymous whistleblower who had exposed Pinnacle Capital's corruption. Friends reached out. Apologies came in from colleagues who had doubted me. Lena and I finally sat together for coffee, the tension between us dissolving into quiet relief. I knew you could do it, she said softly. I didn't want to risk my own career. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I get it. You were smart. And you were brave in your own way. Court ended with Ethan and his accomplices facing multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction. Pinnacle Capital itself collapsed under the weight of the investigations. Lawsuits piled up, executives resigned, investors pulled out, and what remained of the firm's reputation was irrevocably damaged. As for me, I didn't get my job back. My bank accounts had been frozen for months and my reputation had scars that wouldn't fade. But for the first time in a long while, I felt free. Free from lies, free from fear, free to finally breathe. I kept the flash drive. Now more than just a lifeline, it was a proof of integrity in a world that often rewarded the opposite. It wasn't easy. I was scarred emotionally and professionally. The months of being hunted, disbelieved, and threatened left marks I didn't notice until long after the trials ended. Therapy helped. Derek eventually came back into my life, cautiously, carefully, after seeing how serious the situation was. We rebuilt slowly, our trust fragile but growing. Even Lena and I started talking again about what happened, about the quiet strength it took for both of us to survive the corporate storm. And that brings me here. I write this not for fame, not for likes, upvotes, or validation. I write this to tell the truth, the story behind the headlines, the parts the media left out, the human side of a corporate war. People will read about Pinnacle Capital, about the fraud, about the anonymous whistleblower who brought down an empire. But they won't know the nights I stayed awake, terrified of what might happen. They won't know the isolation, the doubts, the moments I nearly gave up. And that's okay. I survived. I fought. I proved that integrity, even when tested in the harshest fire, can prevail. They ruined my name trying to hide their crimes. But I kept my integrity. And in the end, that was enough. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.